The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Yo, what's up? This is FantasyFling looking at Week 8, Millie Maker recap, MME strategy, tournament review, afternoon slate, large field, small field. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let's start off with my DraftKings Millie Maker review. This is over at dfsarmy.com. It will be live by the time you see this. So, we look at this a lot on the show when we do the MME strategy, and this is one of the main reasons we do it, is because you learn things that are working and can take down the Millie and other large field GPPs. And what we saw was a contrarian stack surrounded by great chalk plays. We always say it's good to eat chalk, but get different elsewhere, specifically at running back. Like running back chalk is something you want to embrace. Why? Because they're getting a lot of opportunities. Running backs who are talented, they're getting a good amount of carries. They're getting goal line looks. They're getting passes out of the backfield. So guys like Alvin Kamara, guys like Breece Hall, for example, they have a good floor and ceiling when they're getting the workload that we expect them to get. So they were chalky, but this stack was not, as we're going to see when we get to the ownership numbers. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Gallup. Now, really, it was Dak and Lamb that were the contrarian plays here, and Gallup was a little more chalky, and really, he wasn't needed in the lineup. So this could have easily been a QB +1 with like a Rashid Shaheed, for example, as opposed to, Micah Gallup. So he didn't need the QB +2. But nonetheless, the QB +2 got there this week. So it's kind of throwback for the double stack crowd. And it's funny, Dak and CeeDee Lamb combined for 76 points. But you got another 4 from Gallup. So overall, between 3 players, the lineup didn't look very good. 80 points. But certainly got it there and leveraged the field. And then it was contrarian. So only 19%, as you're seeing, with total ownership. Now, kind of as I was saying, Alvin Kamara almost basically 30% ownership. Breece Hall, 45% ownership. So good running back chalk. We loved Breece Hall. He was a core play for us at DFS Army. Me personally, I loved Alvin Kamara too. He was one of the top plays as well. We're certainly over the field there. So I thought these were 2 really good plays. And still, A.J. Brown, same thing. So A.J. Brown was in a smash matchup going against Washington's poor D. Loved A.J. Brown this week. Surprised, honestly, he wasn't higher owned than 21%. And then the same thing with Trey McBride. He was in an elevated role. I personally loved him this week at only 2,800. He had already gotten targets with Zach Ertz, talented young rookie in a deep tight end class. Kind of got overlooked. But at 2,800, he was already getting targets with Zach Ertz in the lineup. Zach Ertz goes down, goes on IR. Well, Trey McBride, 2,800, he absolutely smashed. And it's a garbage time thing, but garbage time wins GPPs too. So, and then as we get into the leverage plays here, ate a lot of chalk, contrarian stack with Dak 6%. CeeDee Lamb 5%, and Gallup actually garnering the most ownership. I think just based on price at 3,500, pretty good matchup. But the top leverage plays that we see, It's kind of funny because when we were looking at the chalkboard, Dak was actually projected to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks. And when it was all said and done, I think a lot of people just kind of ignored the fact that he was popping and optimals, because he certainly was at DFS Army's domination station. And I was just like, I don't want to play a lot of Dak. Like, I want to make sure I get Hurts and Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, and I wanted to get some Burrow, and I wanted to get some Trevor Lawrence, and some Kirk Cousins, and then I was like, okay, then I'll allow like 10% Dak. Well, ended up getting hardly any Dak, and I think that's what a lot of the field did. He was only 6% owned, and Lamb was the guy that I think was a great one-off as a direct leverage play off of Tony Pollard, and that's exactly, we're gonna get into the exposures of the guy who won the Millie Maker next, because he actually was one close to an MME type player, as he had over 100 lineups. But I think it's a great direct leverage play, and obviously he had a lot of them, as we're going to see next. And then DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I'm not a believer in Will Levis, and I think when it comes time, everyone will kind of see that this is probably just come in, clean pocket. DeAndre Hopkins just streaking down the sideline. He's got a big arm, great arm, hits him in stride. I think over the long term, though, he's not going to be good, but it doesn't matter on any one slate, right? So Will Levis gets a start. DeAndre Hopkins is obviously a safety blanket for him in this game, and he hit him. I think he only had a few catches, honestly, but they were all touchdowns. But shout out to Bobby Wow. Now, if you watch Tournament Tactics, I've said this before, we say it a lot. Bobby Wow always gives gems. So when he speaks, you listen. And this was a stack that he gave out on Tournament Tactics. So definitely make sure you're watching that show every week. Hit that notification button, by the way. Subscribe and hit that notification button when they go live, because they do every Friday on Tournament Tactics. So last thing for me here is just kind of the pricing and the value. Now, this is something you have to think about when you're piecing together a lineup. I know people tend to overlook it. They're just looking for leverage. They're who are the locks and this and that. Like, lineup construction is so important, because one thing you will notice here, highest player is 8,000. In fact, only twice this year have we had a player above 8,500. So, and it's much more doable to have an $8,000 player and a 7,300 player and a 7,600 player when you have a cheaper quarterback, right? Because then you're not punting like at so many other positions. Dak Prescott, 6,100. CD Lamb, 7,600. But in the stack, Gallup, 3,400. So between the three, it's 5,700 average, which is really good. And you get Trey McBride, who is a punt, but not really a punt, because he's now the starter. And, he was already getting targets. So you found some really good value here with Trey McBride, and, a good stack. Dak, probably the cheapest he's been in a while, almost, in the fives. And that allowed for you to get Alvin Kamara, AJ Brown, and CD Lamb. Like, these are the kind of studs you need for that type of ceiling. And also Breece Hall, let's be honest, he's underpriced. I think when the season's all said and done, he's going to be closer to 7K than he is to 5. So same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. This lineup has a lot of ceiling. Hopkins, Lamb, AJ Brown, Breece Hall, Kamara, and that is certainly how it was able to come together. You find pricing inefficiencies, guys who can really smash their value. DeAndre Hopkins, Trey McBride, CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, all over 5X. So really good. And then AJ Brown, he's priced all the way up, still hit 4.5X, because AJ Brown is a beast. I've been an AJ Brown truther since the early part of year one. I freaking love that dude. I drafted him everywhere. He was a man among boys year one, and he's just unstoppable right now. But yeah, let's just kind of overall thought on ceiling is we have 5 weeks with a winning score under 240 points and a couple high scoring weeks, 259. There was like a 253 week, a 295 point week. So this has really brought the average to 245 points, but overall it's been kind of lower scoring. So, that's not really a surprise. We're missing a lot of key players, and it seems to be getting worse and worse every week. Justin Jefferson is out. Eckler missed some time. Saquon Barkley missed some time. Jonathan Taylor missed some time. A lot of these studs, like this is something that factors into all that. And so just something to keep in mind. Even though this lineup won with a QB +2, it wasn't optimal. It would have been a QB +1. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop into Jasper's exposures. And this isn't something that we normally do on this show, because a lot of times the guy that wins the Millie Maker has got 5 lineups in. They got 1 lineup in. So, when you have that many lineups, the player combinations are so vast, and, the cream rises to the top, and sometimes it's just a one lucky lineup. So it's nice to see a little bit of MME, so we can kind of get their thought process. We can see, was this just one lucky lineup, or were they really on the right plays this week? All right, so you could see right away at quarterback, he had 50% Dak. And, by the way, this guy is a member at like another site. So, you could tell just by looking at his lineups. This is something I caught wind of today. Didn't see any avatar or anything, but just by looking at his lineups, this is clearly a guy that was heavy on the right plays. A lot of good plays, but specifically on this slate. And like I said, DFS Army's domination station was pushing Dak. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to play Dak? I really can't play Dak. I could play Mahomes in a good matchup. I could play Hurts in a good matchup. I could play Lamar in a good matchup. So Jesus knows best. By the way, this is something you have access to as a DFS Army subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, this is something that you have access to. One of the tools. Just lean on the tools if that's your thing. And it certainly won this guy $1 million. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off VIP subscription. And by the way, in the YouTube description of this video, if you scroll down, it shows you how to get a free month offer. So if you're not convinced, you don't want to pay, you want to try a free month, hit that free month offer link in the video subscription. So Dak Prescott, he was 50% owned. So really high, right? So we're talking 108 lineups were 50%. So that's 54 lineups of Dak Prescott. And really, no one else was higher than 10%. So clearly, Jasper knew who he wanted at quarterback, and maybe set a minimum exposure to Dak and just let whatever optimizer he was using kind of do the rest. And, and this is kind of what pains me when I see stuff like this. I'm like, these were the plays that I was on. I sent like 60% exposure to like Breece Hall. I was all in on Breece Hall this weekend, and normally we'll do like a max of 35%. I normally don't want an optimizer to just kind of run wild, because you will have so many peaks and valleys, and I don't like to play that way. But yeah, Breece Hall, almost all in, 90%. Alvin Kamara, 75%. So really a lot of positive leverage here, as you can see. And one of the reasons why, by the way, I don't want to play this way, it's not because, I don't believe in the plays that we may have, but sometimes there's been so many times where you would go all in on a guy, you'd have 80, 90% exposure, and then they get hurt in the second quarter. And I don't know about your bankroll, but I value mine, and I don't really like to have like my whole entire day ruined because one guy got injured. So just keep that in mind. You can play this way. Do you have the bankroll to stomach it? Do you have the mental space to stomach huge ups and downs? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. But when it hits, you can really leverage the field like in an unbelievable way. And honestly, Breece Hall didn't even have the best day, but he had the right stack with Dak, 50%. Breece Hall did good, don't get me wrong, but he didn't like break the slate or anything. And Alvin Kamara, kind of same thing, had a good day. Really, the better guys to have, Gus Edwards, Gus Edwards at 5,500, a low ownership, certainly had a good day. Travis Etienne also had a good day. So there was some other good plays. CD Lamb, and this is the thing, Dak and CD Lamb. So that is really what set this lineup apart. And also being way over the field on DeAndre Hopkins. No one played DeAndre Hopkins, but he still had 16%. So didn't need 100% or 80% or 60% of a guy that nobody was playing. And if you look at his exposures, he wasn't even that confident and he was going to have a good day. But he's like, I'm just going to be like way over the field, but at less than 1%, that is not hard to do, right? Drake London didn't get there. Was confident in Drake London, but didn't have the huge day that he wanted Drake London to have. But really, CD Lamb and DeAndre Hopkins, that's really all this lineup needed. AJ Brown over on AJ. Just enough. So over on AJ, way over on Lamb, way over on Hopkins. And that's really all that was needed. And that's the crazy thing to me. Actually, under on Trey McBride in the winning Millie Maker build had Trey McBride in it, but really high on Logan Thomas and Travis Kelce and Jake Ferguson. It just goes to show you don't have to be perfect with every single decision you make, right? Trey McBride was the guy that you actually wanted to have the most exposure to. Did not. Was actually under the field, but because he had Hopkins, Lamb, and Prescott and was so over the field on those three, that's all it took. And also, you will notice faded the Atlanta Falcons defense. So, or just even on the field, but really was over on Minnesota. And why not? I loved Minnesota too. Going against Jordan Love and the Packers, who have not been good. So really good stuff. Clearly was on a few plays that ended up making all the difference. So good for him. All right. So we are going to go to Chipotle Addict. Chipotle Addict. And by the way, speaking of, do something real quick. Shout out a few of our people, DFS Army. This is what we're going to do. I've been telling people, if you're a DFS Army subscriber, you're watching this show, send me your wins. Send me what you did well. I don't care if it's a small win, if you're profitable, small field, large field. Oh, this is awesome. We got our boy. Get to the Choppa. In fact, he changed his name. I like it. Also changed his Avi. He sent me this. It was a selfie. I was like, yeah, that's great. But also, like, I need a DFS Army Avi on it. So he did. Over Chipotle Addict, over BK Reader. These are two top DFS pros here. Third place. Freaking awesome. Love seeing it. So just had to show that because Chipotle Addict, obviously, this is the lineup that we're reviewing right now. And so Chipotle Addict, his top lineup was, Hurts, Etienne, Mixon, Addison, McLaurin, Downs, McBride, AJ Brown, and Cincy defense. So he had a Hurts plus AJ Brown, and then he also had a Mixon and Cincy D. So he had a secondary stack. Running back plus the defense. That is certainly a great correlation. The idea there is a team is winning. They're running the ball. The defense is getting opportunities. The other team is playing from behind, so they're throwing. The defense is now in a position where they are kind of going for sacks. They're feasting. Sacks can score points, but also can lead to turnovers, interceptions, fumbles, and whatnot. So it's great correlation there. It still works. As you see, this lineup that he had 200 points in a low-scoring week in the Millie Maker, pretty solid. And then, let's kind of look at his exposures. Now, a couple notes. He had one of the better weeks of DFS pros in the Millie Maker. It was a losing week all around for the pros. Pretty contrarian lineup, 117%. He had 13 quarterbacks, as we'll see. So it wasn't like the last guy who won the Millie Maker had anyone that he really loved. However, the one guy he had the highest exposure to had a great week. So there's a reason he's a top DFS pro. Sam Howell, 28%. And then, Mac Jones, Pickett, a couple vomit sacks, Jalen Hurts, just even the field there. A lot of quarterbacks. Highest exposure was Pollard. So you kind of see his lineup construction. Yeah, if he's going to play the chalk and then have guys at quarterback who are low owned. Howell, Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett. He didn't really eat chalk anywhere at quarterback. If we're looking at it, he was even with Jalen Hurts. So, and that was the chalkiest of really what he had. But yeah, Pollard, Hubbard, that's contrarian, way over the field there, which I think was a good play because there was this uncertainty if Miles Sanders was coming back. Oh, yeah, Chuba Hubbard is going to get the bulk of the work, in fact. And Joe Mixon, he finally got into the end zone and, had himself a decent day. But certainly not what we had remembered from Mixon in the past, where he would break the slate and end up in the Millie Maker. Jonathan Taylor, and this was like so tilting to me because we loved Jonathan Taylor if there was no Zach Moss. But I thought even if Zach Moss is active, he's coming off an injury. What if they just give Jonathan Taylor a bunch more carries? And they did in the first half. And he was smashing in the first half. And then he got like 11 carries in the first half. And then in the second half, he got like one carry or something like very small. And, they said he was on a snap count or whatever, but he was seen like limping off to the sideline. So, I kind of feel like he tweaked something. Clearly it wasn't big because we didn't get any news of it today, but you just wonder what exactly happened there. But yeah, nonetheless, he didn't get the carries that we wanted him to get, but I still think it was a good play. And smashed in the first half, just didn't get there in the second half, was double the field. I had a ton of him. And then ETN, I couldn't really understand why the field wasn't on ETN. It was a good matchup, and he's just been getting great volume. And he ended up with like 24 points. So really good play there. Pacheco, he just burned us all. And listen, I'm a Broncos fan, okay? So for me to play a bunch of Chiefs, that just goes to show that I leave my bias at the door when it comes to playing DFS. I played Mahomes, I played Kelsey, I played Pacheco, but it just didn't get there. Broncos defense, they've made a lot of changes. And, they played the Chiefs twice and held them to 9 points and 19 points. They've been much improved over the past month of the season. So it's just something to think about going forward. Look at those. Keep in mind, look at what has happened. Don't look at necessarily. This is one thing about statistics. If you have huge outliers in a smaller sample size, that will make the numbers fluctuate. So if you look at the first 4 weeks of the season, the Broncos are historically bad defense. If you look at the past 4 weeks, they're a pretty good defense. So if you're just combining those 8 weeks and you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, this is an absolutely terrible defense. Okay, you can think that. But if you thought that and you played the Broncos, and if you targeted the Broncos defense the past 4 weeks, it hasn't gone that well for you. And by the way, they have a bye week and they're going to play the Bills. So, they'll probably come out of the bye and get smoked by the Bills. But I'm just saying it's certainly something to think about. You have to look at recent trends in addition to the whole body of work because things change. This is a league that there's huge ups and downs in the league. But anyways, rant over. Wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, smash, Tyreek Hill, good day, not nearly enough for his salary. Kendrick Bourne, sucks to see him go. He got hurt in the fourth quarter, but still had a good day. Pickens, he was very productive on the targets that he got, but not enough. So, and these were all good plays. All good plays. Over on A.J. Brown, slightly over on Addison. But yeah, so overall the lineup was good, but as you're seeing, no CeeDee Lamb, Very low CD Lamb, so 4%. And DeAndre Hopkins. Where's DeAndre? In fact, let's look at his top lineups. So Hurts, Brown, and McLaurin. So yeah, all good. Logan Thomas, McBride, double tight end, Broncos D. But yeah, I didn't have the CD Lamb lineups that you needed towards the top. So, all right, one more guy. Then we're going to take a look at a little bit of the other matchups, the other, the afternoon slate, like some of the other contests. But I just want to take a look at Utica real quick. All right. Utica's top lineup. Now, this was kind of crazy to see. So he had a Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. So Purdy +2, but we know Christian McCaffrey also creates a lot on his own. And then Jamar Chase and T. Higgins bring back. And I had to double check and make sure this wasn't the afternoon slate because in this day's NFL, that's a lot of players to have from one game. So Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins bring back. And it's also rare that T. Higgins and Chase both go off in the same game. But I mean, let's be honest, not everyone, as good as some of these pros are, not everyone really follows the specific sports like the NFL. Like, let's be honest, not a lot of DFS pros actually watch all the games. So Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd would probably be a better stack. But oh, by the way, T. Higgins is also way cheaper than he normally is. So he's only 5,900. So maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just talking out of my ass right there. It happens, but just saying historically, Higgins and Chase haven't correlated very well together. So that was the top lineup, 89%, about 200 points. And let's just kind of take a look at some of the exposures. Now, he had, from looking at it, he had a lot of QB +2 and 2 bringbacks in his lineups. So, playing for the game stacks, of course. Also QB +1 and QB +2, and a lot of wide receiver in the flex, but, it wasn't a good day for him. So, those bigger stacks, it's kind of like, yeah, you're playing for first or last type of thing. But not a ton of exposure to all the different quarterbacks. Not a ton of exposure to any one quarterback. So Burrow 18%. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 18 quarterbacks. Lot of different quarterbacks. But yeah, way heavy on JT, kind of as we were talking about a little bit. Pollard, Swift. I like Swift too. I thought it was a great game script for him, but usage has been kind of down. So something we're going to have to take a look at the past few weeks. It hasn't been good. Bijan, Joe Mixon. Brees Hall, Pacheco, and Alvin Kamara. And then Jamar Chase. So really high on Jamar Chase. And of course, he did not get there. Not the day you need it. Neither did Ayuk. But yeah, that was the highest guy. And I mean, when I say really high, I mean, we're not talking like the guy who won the Millie Maker high. He obviously, his exposures were much higher, but that was his highest exposure, 37%, which is typically kind of how I play it. I'm going to set a 35% cap exposure. And if there's a guy that I really like, I might bump it up 50, 60%, kind of a max. Evan Ingram, Schultz, and Hawkinson. No tight ends were really high owned. Same thing with defense, keeping it low. And I like that because defense, there's so much variance. So the last thing I want to do is go in on a defense that looks to be in a great spot and absolutely crushes your lineup. So, um, let's go to a couple lineups and a couple contests that are like smaller and just kind of get a feel for, what one. I like these kind of lineups, the power sweep. In fact, I wasn't it, but our boy Nolan, I gotta pull this up real quick. I know he had let's actually take a look at this and see which one it was. I know he had some lineups in some of these, more, I guess, mid stakes type of small field stuff where you can win a good amount. So the 200K power sweep, 50K to first. So shout out to Nolan. He had a profitable week. The flea flicker, he ended up losing a little bit of money in that, but he's won that just, I don't know, it was like a month ago that he won that. And then did well in the power sweep. And that's why we like these smaller field contests. So you could do very well in these. And which one was it that he was in? 50K to first. Okay. This wasn't the one. That's why. Yeah, we need the 50K to first. That's fine. They didn't have 50K to first, but let's take a look at what won this contest. And of course, Fantasy Labs gonna Fantasy Labs. But shout out to Nolan for having another profitable day. Play the small field stuff. Take some shots there. Don't spend all your money in these large field GPPs. I know it feels great. You put in a lot of lineups and, you have 150 chances or whatnot. But some of these smaller field stuffs that, 50 to like $150, take some shots there. Those are certainly much easier to win. So the top lineup in this one was just 226. So still pretty high. And you will see that from time to time when there's, a bit of a chalk smash, right? Normally lineups, contests of this size, which we'll actually look at another one after this, but normally contests of this size, like you can do, 210 will like win the contest, for example. So Dak to CD Lamb, there was no bring back clearly because the Rams sucked yesterday. Alvin Kamara, Brees Hall, AJ Brown. So a lot of the guys we've been seeing, right? These are all chalk. So kind of the same thing. Contrarian, went Josh Downs, went Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, and Cincy D. So good stuff there. Let's see if we can find, I don't know, $50 smaller field. I mean, 5,000 isn't small field, but in relation to the Millie Maker, it's actually a lot smaller. And this one had Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, and that was it. But he dumps off to Alvin Kamara, so it correlates, right? I mean, that's what he does, captain check down. Brees Hall and AJ Brown, CD Lamb. So it was a one-off. Like I said, he was a great one-off in this situation. McBride, Kittle, and Downs. So good stuff. And let's go ahead and look at the afternoon slate before we wrap this up. And one more DFS Army VIP want to shout out. I went to Nolan, and actually perfect timing since we are doing. No, that's not it. There it is, afternoon. Since we are doing the afternoon slate right now, the mini max. In fact, maybe we'll be able to hop in on here if it shows up. You never know with Fantasy Labs, but we had our boy Parmesan. He got first place, also got sixth place. Brock Purdy to George Kittle, also Christian McCaffrey. So kind of what we saw earlier with some of the DFS pros: Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Ayuk. Wow. So Purdy plus 1, 2, and 3. And Jamar Chase bring back. So, wow, good stuff. Also, the one thing to keep in mind is you will see this a lot more. This is an afternoon slate, so we are now off the main slate. So, a QB plus 3 on a 4-game slate is not rare at all, really. But still, nonetheless, great job. And Gus Edwards, this was. I think a really good play. How does Lamar fail? Well, he fails by Gus Edwards getting all the tutties. And Elijah Moore was really the $4,100 punts and did double tight end, which I absolutely love on these afternoon slates. If we're playing a main slate, I may, set like a max exposure to tight end in the flex. On afternoon slates, I leave it at 100. And Broncos D, contrarian play there because everyone again thinks Broncos Z is absolutely terrible, and they weren't yesterday, and they haven't been the past few weeks of the season. So 17 points, that will do it. But yeah, let's see what contests we have. Let's look at the Mega Mini Max. The guy that won the Mega Mini Max won it with, surprise, surprise, kind of the same type of build. Purdy, Christian McCaffrey. This is the Mega Mini Max is a $3 entry fee for 150 max. It's not the Mini Max, which is 50-cent entry fee, but nonetheless, very similar to lineup. Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. So this one didn't have an Ayuk, but it had Gus Edwards, had Jamar Chase, who, had 28 points. So did good, but, didn't quite 4X the salary. Lockett, 22, Cortland Sutton, 10, Trey McBride. So another double tight end, and Denver D scored a little bit higher, 212 points. Really good stuff. Kind of look at prop killers exposures. Wilson, Mahomes, Purdy, Lamar. Lamar is the highest owned, but quietly under the field, getting a good amount of exposure to 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks. So yeah, over 14% on those 4 quarterbacks. Javonte, I love Javonte on this slate. In the main, and specifically I was heavy on him in the afternoon slate, and he really ran hard. There weren't a lot of running lanes. He was just kind of beasting all his yards. Had a pretty good day. Joe Mixon got there too on this slate. Edwards, Christian McCaffrey. So, really had the right guys, and then was under on Pacheco, and that's exactly what you needed to do. He certainly had a bad day. But Ayuk, Jamar Chase, 2 highest guys, had some Judy, decent day, but yeah, better there was Sutton. He had a couple touchdowns. Under on Zay, that also worked out. And I'm guessing he had a lot of Kittle and McBride, and that's exactly what you needed. Wow. So he's a little under on Kittle, but the right lineup was there. So good stuff. Yeah, and then highest owned defense was stone cold minimum Denver defense at $2,000. Positive leverage there. And really, that's all it took. So that's going to wrap it up. I know this was kind of a longer one, so I appreciate y'all joining me. But, if you like this kind of content, hit that like button. So, definitely subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button so that you never miss when we do. We love doing the review shows because it really helps looking back on the past slate, seeing what's winning. And that's like what a lot of inspired other shows like the Millie Maker Secrets, which is a Thursday show that Geek and Burns do. And, that's really just looking at years of research, what is winning in the Millie Maker. And, using that to kind of predict, what kind of plays are we looking at this following week that can take down the Millie Maker. So keep that in mind, and, definitely make sure you are subscribed and hit the notification button so that you don't miss when that show goes live on Thursdays. Also, tournament tactics, like I said, Bobby Wow really called out the DeAndre Hopkins, Will Levis stack. That actually, if the field was on that stack, that would have been the nuts, because Will Levis was 4,400, DeAndre Hopkins was 5,500, but no one played them. So, just giving out gems. So stay with us. We got a lot of content coming your way. And in fact, I got the cash lineup weekend review coming your way. So we will see you soon. We'll see you next week for another week in review.